Hey, how's it going? Jossie here. In this video, I'm going to be talking about what the meta is right now for RBGs, what kind of team comp that most of the high-rated teams are making. I'm going to be going over, every single play tank, healer, DPS, and also why these classes are the ones that are being picked right now. So I want to preface this by saying that these are definitely not the only viable classes. In fact, I would say most of the classes and specs right now are decently viable, especially in RBGs, but these are the classes that are just performing slightly better than everyone else at the high levels of RBGs. It doesn't mean that if you don't build this exact comp that you're going to lose games, but it does mean that if you're like a group lead and trying to form a strong team of pugs, it might be useful to take this into account to try to get a well-rounded team and increase your odds of winning. So to start with, for the tanks, you're either going to want a Vengeance Demon Hunter or a Guardian Druid. And both of them are very viable right now, but for very different reasons. Vengeance Demon Hunter is just so mobile right now with all of its jumps, and it's really hard to kill with its defensives and with its cheat death built into the class. Vengeance Demon Hunter is great for flag carrying, where you can just jump across now really quickly, up and down ledges so you can get away from the enemy DPS, and overall just surviving due to mobility and its kit. It's also decent at holding a flag with Immolation Aura, where you can spin the flag without being able to hit anybody. Guardian Druid, on the other hand, is mobile its own way. It doesn't have the big leaps that can cross the map really quickly, but it does have things like Travel Farm if you're alone, and it has the really useful Legendary, which makes you immune to CC for 30 seconds, which allows you to basically just walk through everything and get to the end. Another big part of Guardian Druid is that they're just completely unkillable right now. They have so much self-healing and mitigation, and they just do such a good job doing tank things such as holding bases and spinning flags and just carrying the flag over. Guardian also has the big benefit of being able to go stealth, really useful for sneaking past the enemy team when you're trying to get to the enemy flag. Overall, both of these tanks are very viable right now. They're just both extremely hard to kill for their own reasons, and they're also mobile enough to get to places where they need to be and hold on to objectives. For the 3 healer spots, right now, what's best in the meta is actually to run 2 Disciplined Priests and 1 Holy Paladin. The reason we run Disciplined Priests is because they just have so much throughput through both Atonement and Ultimate Radiance. They're able to put out a huge amount of overall damage with Purge the Wicked, while also keeping their team alive with burst AoE healing, and also just massive raw healing over time with their atonement and their damage. This priest also bring great utilities such as Master Spell and Purges, Purges being incredibly useful in RBGs where you can take off spells like Dark Soul, Combustion, Power Infusion, and with spells like Pain Suppression and Barrier, you're able to keep your tanks alive when you really need to do that as well. Overall, just in a 10v10 environment, this priest is just able to put out so much healing and damage that it outclasses most of the other healers. Holy Paladin, on the other hand, is also extremely important, but for a totally different reason. Holy Paladins are great at keeping tanks up and spot healing your specific targets that are being focused down. Usually in RBGs, the enemy will have one target that they're all focused on together, where the atonement from a Disc Priest is just not enough to keep them alive through like 3 or 4 DPS training on them. But the Holy Paladin can do that with their single target heals, with Beacon, with Word of Glories. They also bring a lot of utility in the form of Concentration Aura with Aura Mastery, and they have a good amount of CC with the Hodge and Blinding Light. Another big reason Holy Paladin is so important right now is because of Ultimate Sacrifice. In so many flag maps where you come down to the end where your tank has so many stacks and their offensive team has come in, they have like 4 DPS training on your tank, there's just no way to keep them up. Even with the healers, if you're not CC'd, you still can't pump enough healing to get through the damage increase from the stacks of the flag. But if you put up Ultimate Sacrifice, then the tank can actually survive, right? No matter how much damage he's dealt. If your whole paladin is gonna die, he can throw a bubble as well. But basically, this lets your tank live for the extra couple seconds, enough for hopefully you to kill their DPS or to kill their flag carrier. Out of these 3 healer spots, it's a little more flexible than tank. For one of the Disc Priests, you can definitely replace with perhaps a Resto Shaman or another Holy Paladin. But I would highly recommend to definitely have one Holy Paladin and one Disc Priest, with the best third one being Disc Priest. But yeah, can be a little flexible there. Okay, so onto DPS. I'm going to split this into two sections where I would say there are 3 mandatory DPS, which are 1 Rogue, 1 Affliction Warlock, and 1 Target Caller, which can either be preferably Arms Warrior or Frost DK. And outside of these 3, then there's 3 flexible DPS, which still have the best classes, and I'm going to be going over that. But first, to go over the mandatory DPS, it's extremely important to have at least 1 Rogue in your group. Rogue just brings so much important utility by having stealth, sap, and all their CC. In every single map, they're able to contribute so much. On flag maps, they can go off stealth to just keep the enemy tank CC'd, keep them sapped, and just keep them, slowed down enough that they can't capture your flag. At the same time, they're able to open up hard on tanks that have a lot of stacks of the flag, and also at the same time CCing the enemy healers for one quick go. On any kind of flag map, rogues are great where they can just sneak off to enemy base. Either if they're undefended, you can get her free because they don't know where you are because you're stealth, or if it's defended by just one person, you can easily sap them and capture. You can blind and capture. You can, kidney and just reset. There's all sorts of things you can do as a rogue to just force them to defend their bases. Either sit with 2 people, which makes your team fight stronger, or if they dare sit 1 or 0, you can just sneak off and get free bases. On almost all the maps, a really good rogue can just swing the tide of the game on their own. Okay, next in the mandatory DPS, we have Affliction Warlock. The most important part of this being the legendary, which gives corruption a permanent 50% slow. And why this is so important is that RBG is all about movement and objectives. If you have one single player out of the 10 who can just put up corruption on all the enemy players and have them slowed for 50%, it's just so massive. It's such a game changer to have their whole team slow like that. They can't get to their objectives. They can't peel off, to go to other bases. They can't defend their flag carriers, etc., etc. And it's hard to dispel as well because there's always the risk of them having unstable affliction. If a healer dispels an unstable affliction, takes like 10k damage and is silenced, most of the time you can get the cure secure out of that. While the Affliction Lock isn't able to single-handedly swing the game like a rogue does, if you run without one and the enemy team has one, it's very obvious to see the difference where your team just can't move around and get to places, and their team is always going to be able to get to objectives faster than you. Okay, the last of the mandatory DPS is going to be the Target Caller. The Target Caller is the player who, in the middle of a team fight, is going to be calling out the target that everyone needs to switch to. This is really important because if everyone has damage split around to different players, the healer is going to have no problem healing up. There's 3 healers and they can definitely keep up just a couple of DPS. Whereas if you have all of your DPS concentrate together on one target at a time, that's how you're going to be able to secure kills on their DPS. The Target Caller also has important judgment calls to make on who to actually target. It's really important to keep switching because if you're on one target and they get paint suppression, then you gotta switch someone else, right? You don't want all your players to be hitting the player that has 40% damage reduction. Or if they go bare form with Bark Skin, for example, having a really good Target Caller who can switch to the right targets, switch often, and be loud enough that everyone can listen and actually keep up with it is gonna make a massive difference to how much you're able to win team fights. So for target calling, I have 2 options here that are the most seen. Is either an Arms Warrior or a Frost DK. So the reason these guys are chosen, Arms Warrior specifically because they have Sharpened Blade, which makes their Mortal Strike reduce healing taken by 50%. So every time you have Sharpened Blade up and you apply to target when they have their healing reduced by 50%, then it's definitely a chance to kill them if you have your DPS focus in on them. Basically, by switching targets every time you get a Sharpened Blade and having your whole entire team switch to that target, they're not going to be able to be healed up in time with the healing reduction, and you're going to be able to potentially secure a kill. DK on the other hand has Death Grip, which is what they're going to be using to do the target calls and target swaps. If your DK TC sees healer without trinket and just finish the cooldown, they can pull them in. You can all switch on them and kill them. Same as for ranged DPS if they don't have Ice Block up or something. Basically, by gripping someone in who's not expecting it and all switching them all at once, it makes it much easier to get the kill on that guy. So now we have 3 more DPS slots to fill, and for these 3 spots, I would recommend you just take the best players you can find, right? Either with the highest, CR experience, or perhaps the buff that your teams are missing, or players that that you played before that are good. However, I will mention 2 classes that are really stand out right now and who see a lot of play, and definitely are classes that you want to pick up if you see good ones. So the first standout DPS that you would want to fill with is Boomkin. Boomkins right now are extremely strong in team fights. They're both able to do huge AoE like dot damage, a good amount of rot pressure, and at the same time they're able to pump out great single target burst damage with their star surges. More important than be able to pump out big damage and win team fights though is the fact that Boomkins can go stealth. So when you have a Boomkin, they can stealth to help your rogue out if they're assaulting a base and there's more than one player there, right? They can use Cyclone, In-Cap Roar, and Root Beam or Bash, whichever one they've taken, to help secure the CC cap. Essentially, you can play as a rogue that does more damage, doesn't have as much CC, but can go together with your rogue to put even more stealth pressure out on the map. The other DPS that I want to mention that you definitely want to fill with is Red Paladin. Red Paladin right now is just able to pump out so much burst damage. If they get all their cooldowns lined up and are not CC'd properly or being dispelled frequently, they can just totally delete enemy players. In addition to that, they also have great off healing for when their cooldowns are not up, and are just able to help your team stay alive, help your healers keep up the important targets. Okay, now that we've gone over which of the classes are performing great right now for each role, let's go into some sample comps we can build with this knowledge, just as an example to see where I'm going with this. So the first comp that I want to talk about that I've personally been having huge amount of success with is more of a melee cleave comp. So for a tank, we'll run perhaps Vengeance. We'll have 2 Discipline Priests, we'll have a Holy Paladin, Rogue, Affliction Warlock, and then we'll have an Arms Warrior, a Frost DK, and a Ret Paladin. Any of these 3 can be the target caller really. And we'll have Boomkin to help the Rogue with some stealth play. With this sample comp, this is one where we're going to be trying to win the team fights by, just completely steamrolling over them with our triple melee. We're going to have great amount of teamfight healing with the 2 Disc Priests, and Vengeance Demon Hunter is able to mostly take care of himself by getting out of trouble. Hopefully you can get a big opener with the DKs, all of its AoE CCs, and with 3 melees and Boomkins and such, just totally melt players one by one. You definitely need a good target caller and DPS who are able to switch really well with this comp, but if you can get it right, then you can win team fights in just seconds and kind of carry the game from there. The second sample comp that I'm going to be going over is more of a spell cleave based comp, more focused on the power of specifically Boomkins. So we're going to be running Guardian Druid, 1 Disc Priest, 1 Holy Paladin, and we're going to have a Resto Shaman to try to get Sky Fairy Totem. We're going to have, as usual, the Rogue, Affliction Warlock, and Arms Warrior, and then we're going to have 2 or 3 Boomkins, and potentially a Mage if we don't run that 3rd Boomkin. Mage being great for Arcane Intellect, Polymorphs if they're great at using it, greater Pyros and such for securing kills. This comp in a big team fight with the Warlock and the Boomkins running Convoke is able to just put out so much huge damage in a team fight to try to overwhelm the healers so that you can just kill them ahead of time. Having 2 to 3 Boomkins can also really mess with the enemy team in terms of stealth play, right? If you have 4 of your members stealth, they have no idea where you're going to be. It's really hard for them to track which base you're going to hit next. And because of that, you can kind of pick and choose where you want to team fight and just dominate just by numbers. So there you have it. That's what the meta is looking like in RBGs at the top level of play. Once again, this is not the ultimate source of truth. This doesn't mean that if you don't play on these specs, you're not going to be doing well in RBGs, but always player skill is going to be more important than what class and spec you play. I hope this is going to be a great resource for players who are trying to build their own RPG groups, especially at lower ratings who don't know what's good to run. But either way, I hope you learned a lot from this video. I'm going to be releasing more RBG content in the coming weeks, so like and subscribe if you enjoyed it and want to see more. And thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.